I want to share a little bit about the topic of work-life balance, and I wanted to start with a provocative statement that I don't believe in work-life balance. But as you see on the screen, I think there might be a better way or a better question to ask than can I achieve work-life balance? I had a surprising experience recently working as a management consultant. I was sent on a training course, and as part of the preparations for the training course, I had to invite a whole group of my colleagues to provide 360-degree feedback on what I'm good at and what are my areas for development. And there was a great mix of both. But one of the things that my colleagues highlighted as an area of strength was they thought I had a good work-life balance. And this was a surprise to me because that was not my experience. So I have lots of different hats that I wear. At work, I serve clients. I help them develop software better at scale in large, complex environments. I help develop the topic for my firm. I also help develop and mentor colleagues. I'm a married man. I've been fortunate to be married to Rhoda for 28 years, and we've known each other for 34 years, I think it is. We have 4 wonderful children you can see up here on the screen. Ella and Isabel are both off at university themselves. Alice is about to go off to college next year, and Toby's 11. And they're wonderful. They're also a real handful. Having 4 kids is a serious responsibility. I'm also a person of faith, and I'm very actively involved in the church group. That picture on the bottom right you see there is me and a couple of other characters singing a very, very silly song to the great embarrassment of my children at a teen summer camp that I take a week off work every year to help support. And then I'm also a chairman of the board of a medium-sized charity, and I sit on the board of a consortium of IT firms and people who want to get the most value out of IT. And so there's lots and lots going on in my life. And I often feel like things aren't completely in control. Even on the way here, I was so eager to get off the plane that Dev mentioned that I neglected to check that I had all of my possessions with me. And I got through passport control and thought my bag is feeling a little bit light. And lo and behold, I realized that my laptop, on which I'd carefully taken my notes to prepare for this talk, was where I'd left it, underneath the seat in front of me. Now, thankfully, my laptop was retrieved, and I'm looking forward to retrieving my precious when I get back to the airport in an hour or two's time. But it often feels to me like I'm spinning these different plates of work and family and church and other activities that I'm passionate about, and I'm running around, and it always feels like there's at least one plate that is wobbling and is in danger of falling to the ground with a big crash. And so I wondered, why is it then that my colleagues seem to feel that I have a better sense of work-life balance than perhaps they experience themselves? And I don't know that I have objectively the answer, and I'm certainly not claiming that my life is all together. But I would like to share with you 3 things that have helped me to answer a slightly different question. So the first conviction I have is that I decided to pursue fulfillment rather than balance. Working in management consulting, I started out as a consultant on our generalist career track in the firm that I work for, and there's an up or out expectation. In other words, every 2 or 3 years, you either progress to the next level in the career track, or you're given the encouragement to find a new career outside of the firm. And after having been a consultant and a project leader, a year or 2 into that, I was wrestling with, would I make it to the next level to become a principal? And I realized that I was getting a lot of grief for some of the areas for development that were not where they need to be, and not much appreciation and reward and recognition for some of the deep, more specialist technology skills that I brought with me to the firm. And I spoke to my boss about it. I spoke to my career advisor, and they said, look, why don't you take some time away from work to really reflect on what's the right thing for you, what the next steps might be. And so I took 2 months off work. And at the end of it, I came back, and my career manager, a chap called Ralph, said, look, Andrew, I think you'd be better suited if you move sideways to what we've called an expert career track. And this is an area where you'll get more recognition for the deep technical skills that you brought to the firm, and a little bit less grief for some of the spikiness of your skills profile that you've experienced so far. And what's more, you'll get 20% of your time away from billable client work in order to be able to speak at conferences and write white papers and do other things. And I thought, wow, that's actually, when I look back at the 2 previous companies I've worked for, those are the kinds of things that I'm really passionate about, I really enjoy doing. And so that's what I decided to do. And that's worked out really, really well for me as a project leader, principal, associate director, and now director in the firm. The other thing that I learned out of this experience was I came back from the 2 months away, and I thought, surely the world will have come to a stop without my direct engagement in the workforce. And to my dismay, everything had continued completely as it was before. In fact, quite a lot of my colleagues didn't even realize that I'd been away for 2 months. They thought, oh, he's been staffed on a project in Uzbekistan or somewhere far away. And that was a real eye-opener for me. You know, initially I was a little bit disappointed, if I'm honest, that I wasn't more, irreplaceable to my colleagues and to my clients. But then I realized, actually, if it's possible to disappear for 2 months at a time between projects, in consulting at least, that's something I could perhaps do more often in order to pursue some of the other things that I'm at least as passionate about as going to work every day. And so a couple of years later, I took my whole family away to India. And in addition to doing the usual touristy things like going to the Taj Mahal, I also did some work with an amazing charity called Hope Worldwide that was doing great things with orphans, with leprosy patients, with underprivileged kids and their education, with immunization, with maternal health. And my wife, myself, and our kids were all able to find a way that we could do something meaningful even in our short trip. And it was such a wonderful experience for us that we've since been back to Nepal, and we've helped with earthquake relief there. We've also got involved with the same charity in their work they do here in London with homelessness and with drug abuser rehabilitation and recovery. And I've realized, hey, that's, it's only a small part of what I spend my time doing, but it's something that instills passion in me and that makes me more and more excited. Last year I again took a month off work and went mountain climbing with my daughter Isabel. She's off at university, and I've realized, hey, we don't have as many opportunities to spend time together as we used to when she lived at home. I want to make sure I create special opportunities to connect together with her and with my other kids at this precious stage in their lives. And each of these helped remind me of what I'm passionate about, what I find most fulfilled. And so my life is definitely not balanced by any sane person's description, but I'd like to think that it's fulfilled. The second lesson that I discovered was realizing that I had to say no more often. You've probably realized by now that I'm not someone who finds it easy to say no to things. I love to say, yes, let's go for this adventure, or yes, let's try this new project, or develop this new topic. And I had a conversation about 10 years ago that flipped my thinking on this subject. There's a friend of mine called John Oakes, who is a science lecturer at University in San Diego. And he's very passionate about the idea that faith and science actually complement each other rather than being opposites that are in conflict with each other. And he takes several weeks, I think it is, every year to travel around the world and speak at different conferences and churches and different debates to share his convictions on this subject. And I'd been to one of his talks, and I was sitting down having lunch with him afterwards, and I said, John, I find what you do so inspiring. It's a topic that's close to my heart. I'd like to do some of what you do. And my kids at that stage were sort of between the ages of about 1 and 12. And he said to me, Andrew, you're about the next 10 years of your life are going to be the busiest time of your entire life. now may not be the best time to suddenly embark on a major new time commitment. And I was initially just disappointed. I had this idea I was excited about. I really wanted to pursue it, and he just poured cold water over it. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that he actually made sense, and I needed to focus on just doing a great job of being a husband, being a dad, being a management consultant, being a great, participant in the church community that I'm part of. Those are the 4 things I said I'm really passionate about, and if I do a great job with those, I'm going to feel excited about that. If I go chasing after rainbows, chasing after the next shiny thing, then I might not, I might regret the compromises I'm making with the things I'm most passionate about. And so realizing that I had to say no a little bit more often, maybe a lot more often than I previously had, was an eye-opening moment for me. And it certainly helped me over the last 10 years to do better at the things that I'm most passionate about. Thirdly and finally, keep calm and drink coffee. My life wouldn't at all be possible, the fulfilled, passionate, busy, slightly crazy life that I live wouldn't at all be possible without the incredible partnership and support I have with my wife, Rhoda. And one of the key strengths I think we have in knowing each other for 34 years and been married for 28 is that we have a lot of the same values, the same priorities, the same commitment. And through our journey of life together, having children and her being a teacher and then childminder and now counselor, that's been a great rock and a strength to us. And yet, very often, when the plates were starting to wobble and maybe 1 or 2 of them fell, we'd find we had conflict because she was expecting me to anticipate these challenges a little bit earlier. And she's generally a lot more perceptive than me about when things are starting to go off the rails. And she says to me that she'd like me to listen to her a little bit more often in order to identify these issues. At least I think that's what she said. And yet I find that often in the hustle and bustle of life, even though we spend time talking together, we wouldn't make the time and space to step back and reflect. And we discovered one Saturday morning as we went out to a favorite coffee place, there was something magical about going out for coffee. Not necessarily the coffee beans themselves, although I do like my grande skinny wet latte, but just the very act of getting out of the house, getting away from the hustle and bustle of kids and laundry and emails and notifications and all of the pressures that seem to be around, made a quiet space where we could step back from the here and now and think, okay, how is our marriage? How are we doing? How are we communicating? How are our expectations and plans going? How is Ella or Isabel or Alice or Toby? What do they need from us? To have the conversations where she'd said to me, okay, Toby's now 6 or 7. He needs more time for his dad. We need to make a structural change. Or we've been at each other's throats a little bit for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And we talk about, is this just a short-term thing or is this a structural thing? Sometimes it's just a busy project or 2 projects at the same time or a small transitional thing where our schedule's changed and we say, okay, this is just for a short period of time. And as long as we know it's just 2 weeks or just 4 weeks, we can say, okay, we'll hold each other's arms up, we'll support each other, and it's going to be fine. Other times we realize, actually, this is a structural change in our lives. Our kid has moved on to a next stage of college, or my role has changed at work, or she's gone back to college to study counseling, and things are going to be different around here. We need to make a structural change. And we found just getting outside of our daily routine, going out for a cup of coffee, and has made room for those conversations and has enabled us to listen to each other, and certainly for me to be a better listener to my wife than I previously had been. And that's made an enormous difference. And I wouldn't say that we've achieved balance, because it always feels like, the plates are wobbling a little bit, but it allows us to spot the wobbles a little bit earlier and to intervene and at least to choose which plates we mind less falling to the ground, and to choose to invest in and to support and to keep spinning, the 4 or 5 plates that we feel most passionate about and that we find most fulfilling. So in wrapping up the day, talking about the future of us, making your life sustainable is certainly important. But I would encourage you to think less about a mythical ideal of work-life balance or student life balance, and instead to pursue a passion, to identify what your 3 or 4 deepest passions are, and to really invest and double down in those, to go after them, to say no to other things that might distract you from them, and to take a little bit of time out of your day with the people closest to you, to step back from the hustle and bustle, and to redirect yourself to keep spinning those most important, most passionate plates in order to find a great future for yourself and for us all. Thank you very much.